"Get out!" she yelled. "We've been living here for free for 4 years." Sarah's shout hit me like a slap across the face. I was standing in the doorway of my own living room, and she was pointing her finger at me as if I were a trespasser. 4 years, she had said. 4 years living under my roof without paying a single cent. 4 years destroying my peace, my dignity, my life. I opened my mouth to reply, but then I saw Alex get up from the sofa. My son, my own son, advanced toward me with his fists clenched and a look I had never seen before, a look of pure hatred. "Get out of my apartment," I managed to say, but my voice sounded weak, broken. Alex moved closer, dangerously close. His hands went up, and I saw his fingers curl, ready to grip my neck. My heart pounded against my chest so hard I thought it would break right through. This was my son, the boy I had carried in my arms, the man who now wanted to hurt me. But then I reached into my purse. My fingers touched the envelope, the paper that would change everything. And when I pulled it out, when I held that document right in front of their faces, I saw something I will never forget. Their faces fell. Sarah's mocking smile disappeared as if someone had flipped a switch. Alex froze, his hands still raised in the air, his mouth hanging open. "What is that?" Sarah whispered, and for the first time in years, I heard fear in her voice. But I didn't answer them immediately. I let the silence eat away at them. I let them feel what I had felt for so long: helplessness, terror, humiliation. Though to understand how we got to that moment, I need to take you back. I need you to see how this all began, how I went from being a happy woman in her own home to becoming a prisoner. 4 years ago, my life was completely different. I had just lost Michael, my husband. 45 years together. 45 years of laughter, of little fights, of morning coffee, of hands intertwined while watching television. The apartment where I was now being humiliated was our sanctuary. Every corner held a piece of him. The dining table where we celebrated every one of Alex's birthdays. The window where Michael used to take pictures of the sunset. The worn armchair where he would fall asleep reading the newspaper. I had worked all my life as a seamstress. My hands knew every type of fabric, every stitch. I had saved penny by penny alongside Michael. He worked in construction. He would come home with rough hands and a tired body, but always with a smile for me. We bought this apartment together 30 years ago, 30 years of paying every installment religiously, 30 years filling it with memories. When Michael died, the apartment was legally put in my name. Everything legal, everything in order. It was mine, my refuge, my only piece of stability in a world that suddenly felt empty and cold. The first few months after his death were awful. I would wake up looking for him. I would prepare coffee for 2 out of habit. I talked to myself, thinking he would answer from the other room. Alex would come to visit on Sundays. Sometimes he brought Sarah, his wife. She was always distant with me. Polite, yes, but cold, as if being in my home was an obligation and not a pleasure. I tried to please her. I cooked her favorite dishes. I asked her about her work. But there was always an invisible barrier between us, a tension that I didn't understand. Then, one afternoon in March, Alex arrived with a look on his face that I had never seen. Genuine worry mixed with something else, something I couldn't quite identify at the time. "Mom, I need to talk to you," he said as he sat on the sofa. "Sarah is pregnant." My heart jumped. I was going to be a grandmother? The news should have filled me with joy, but there was something in his tone that made me nervous. "That's wonderful, son," I replied with a smile. "Yes, but—" He paused for a long time. "We have financial problems. The rent for our apartment went up to $900 a month, and with the baby on the way, we can't afford it. We're thinking about moving to something cheaper, but everything we find is in dangerous areas." I felt a knot in my stomach. I knew where this conversation was going. "We need your help, Mom, just for a few months, until the baby is born and I get that raise they promised me at work. 6 months, a year tops." I looked at my son. I saw the child I had raised alone when Michael worked double shifts, the young man I had applauded when he graduated, the man who cried on my shoulder when we buried his father. How could I say no? "It's fine," I sighed. "You can stay here as long as you need." His face lit up. He hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. "Thank you, Mom. Thank you. You don't know what this means to us. I swear it will be temporary. As soon as our situation improves, we'll leave." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to think that my son would keep his promise. 2 weeks later, they arrived with their suitcases. Sarah entered the apartment looking at everything with a strange expression. It wasn't gratitude I saw in her eyes. It was something more like evaluation, as if she were calculating, measuring, planning. The first few days were quiet. Too quiet. Sarah barely spoke. She spent her time in the room I had prepared for them, the one that used to be Michael's office. Alex worked late, so I ate dinner alone most nights. But then the small changes began. One day I came back from grocery shopping and found that Sarah had moved the furniture in the living room. "I hope you don't mind," she said without looking at me. "This layout just doesn't make sense. Now there's more space." It bothered me. Of course it bothered me. But I bit my tongue. She was pregnant. The hormones. I had to be understanding. Next came the kitchen. I walked in one morning and all my pots were in boxes. "I brought my own utensils," Sarah explained. "Yours are too old. I don't want to cook with rusty things." My pots weren't rusty. They were the pots I had cooked with for my family for decades. But I didn't say anything. I swallowed my pride and nodded. Every day brought a new small invasion, a new territory conquered. And I kept giving in, thinking it was temporary, thinking they would soon leave and everything would go back to normal. How foolish I was. Because what I didn't know was that Sarah wasn't reorganizing my home. She was taking it over, piece by piece, until there was nothing left of me. Sarah's pregnancy was the perfect excuse for everything, for every change, for every invasion, for every lack of respect. She was pregnant, so she needed the biggest bedroom. She was pregnant, so she couldn't stand the smell of my perfume. She was pregnant, so I had to walk quietly in my own house. By the 3rd month, I no longer recognized my home. The curtains Michael and I had chosen together disappeared. In their place, Sarah hung beige ones that made everything look cold and sad. The family photos that decorated the walls were replaced by meaningless modern art prints. My collection of porcelain figurines that I had gathered for years ended up packed away in boxes in the basement. "This looks more updated," she would say, calling all my things, everything that mattered to me, old-fashioned. One night, I heard Alex and Sarah talking in their bedroom. The door was ajar, and their voices reached the hallway clearly, where I was frozen, holding my breath. "I don't understand why we have to pretend so much," Sarah was saying. "This house should be ours. You're her only son. All this belongs to you by right." "Not yet, Mom," Alex replied. My son's voice sounded tired. "We need more time." "More time for what? We've been here for 4 months without paying anything. We should start looking for a way for her to sign something, a transfer, a will, something." My heart stopped. I felt the floor move beneath my feet. "I don't know if I can do that," Alex said, but his voice didn't sound convinced. It sounded like someone considering the possibility. "Of course you can. She's your mother. She trusts you. You just need the right moment, when she's vulnerable, when she feels lonely." I walked back to my room with trembling legs. I couldn't sleep that night. Sarah's words spun in my head like a broken record. "All this belongs to you by right, when she's vulnerable, when she feels lonely." The next day, I tried to act normal, but something had changed inside me. For the first time, I began to see clearly. They weren't temporary guests. They were invaders. And I had opened the door voluntarily. The baby was born in August, a girl. I hoped that with her arrival, things would improve, that Sarah would soften, that she would regain some humanity. But it was the exact opposite. "Mary, I need you to sleep on the sofa," Sarah told me 2 days after coming home from the hospital. "The baby cries a lot at night, and your room is farther away from the noise. We need rest." "But that's my bedroom," I protested weakly. "Exactly. And since it's your house, you should be more considerate of your guests. Or would you rather the baby not sleep and we all be in a bad mood?" I ended up sleeping on the sofa, in my own house, at my 70 years old. My back screamed in pain every morning, but I didn't dare complain. I didn't want to be the difficult grandmother, the problematic mother-in-law. Months passed, and the promises to leave evaporated like smoke. Every time I brought up the subject, Alex had a new excuse. The raise was delayed. Rents are incredibly expensive. The baby is too young to move. We need to save more. Always more time, more excuses, more lies. Sarah stopped pretending to be nice altogether. Now the orders were direct and cruel. Don't use the washing machine on the weekends. That's when I do the baby's laundry. Don't cook those ethnic dishes. The smell makes me sick. Don't invite your friends over. The baby needs silence. Don't watch television after 8 o'clock. The noise bothers us. My apartment had become a prison with invisible bars. Every room had new rules that I hadn't established, rules that changed according to Sarah's mood. One day she arrived with new locks. "What is that?" I asked, feeling a chill run down my spine. "Locks for our room and for the baby's room. I don't want you coming in without permission. We need privacy." "But it's my house," I said, and my voice sounded pathetic even to my own ears. Sarah looked at me with a cold smile. "Your house? Mary, we've been here for more than a year. Alex is your son. Legally, he has as much right to this place as you do. Maybe you should remember that." No, it wasn't true. The apartment was in my name. And only my name. But the way she said it made me doubt myself. It made me feel small and confused. Alex installed the locks that same afternoon. He didn't look me in the eye while doing it. My son, putting locks on the doors of my own house to keep me out. I cried silently that night on the sofa where I now slept. The streetlights shone through the window, casting shadows on the ceiling. I thought about Michael, how he would have handled this situation. He never would have allowed this. Never. Weekends became my worst nightmare. Sarah invited friends over. They had parties, loud music, laughter, people I didn't know walking through my house as if it were a bar. I locked myself in the small utility closet that was now my only refuge, the only space where Sarah hadn't put a lock yet. One night, one of Sarah's friends mistook me for the housekeeper. "Hey, get me another beer," he shouted from the sofa. "I don't work here," I replied, with the little dignity I had left. "I own this house." The man looked me up and down and laughed. "Seriously? Because it looks like Sarah's the one in charge here." He was right. Sarah was in charge. And I had allowed it to get to that point. I had been too weak, too kind, too naive. The second year was worse than the first. Sarah didn't even pretend to be respectful anymore. She spoke to me as if I were a burden, a nuisance, something to be tolerated until they figured out how to get rid of it. Alex was almost never home. "Working late," he'd say. But I knew it was a lie. He simply didn't want to be home. He didn't want to face what was happening. It was easier to run away than to defend his own mother. The apartment bills were still in my name. The water, the electricity, the gas, the maintenance fees. I paid for everything with my pension of $700 a month. Sarah and Alex didn't contribute a single cent, not even for food. When I cooked, they ate. When I didn't cook, they ordered takeout and didn't offer me anything. One afternoon, my friend Eleanor came to visit. I hadn't seen her in months. I had been isolating myself, ashamed of my situation. But that day, I needed to see a kind face. I needed to remember that good people still existed in the world. "Mary, my God, what happened to you?" Eleanor said when I opened the door. "You look sick. You've lost so much weight." "I'm fine," I lied. "Just a little tired." But Eleanor knew me too well. She came in and looked around. I saw her face change when she saw the apartment, when she saw how different everything was, when she noticed that I was sleeping on the sofa. "What is going on here?" And then, for the first time in 2 years, I broke down. I told her everything. Eleanor hugged me as I sobbed. Tears that I had held back for 2 years burst out like a broken dam. I told her about the humiliations, about the locks, about sleeping on the sofa, about how my own son had abandoned me, about how Sarah treated me like trash in my own home. "This can't go on," Eleanor said firmly. "Mary, this is abuse. They are abusing you." "They are my family," I whispered. "Alex is my only son." "Your son is hurting you, and that woman is a snake. You need to get them out of here." "I can't. She's my granddaughter. If I throw them out, I'll never see her again." Eleanor took my hands. Her eyes were full of tears, but also of something else. determination. Listen to me carefully. If you continue like this, you're going to end up in the hospital. Or worse. I've seen women die from sadness, from stress, from constant humiliation. Is that what you want? No, but then you have to act. This apartment is yours, legally yours. They have no right to treat you like this. They have no right to be here if you don't want them to be. But her words, although true, sounded impossible. How was I going to face Sarah? How was I going to throw out my own son? Just then, Sarah walked into the apartment. She was carrying shopping bags from expensive stores. New clothes, shoes, makeup, all paid for with the money they supposedly didn't have to rent their own place. "What is she doing here?" Sarah asked, looking at Eleanor with contempt. "I came to visit my friend," Eleanor replied in a firm voice. "In her house." Sarah let out a dry laugh. "Her house? That's funny. This house belongs to the family. And you are not family, so I suggest you leave." "I'm not going anywhere until Mary asks me to." Sarah looked at me with those cold eyes I had learned to fear so much. "Mary, tell your friend to leave. Now." I felt Eleanor's gaze on me, waiting, begging me to defend myself for once, but the words got stuck in my throat. The fear was stronger than the courage. "Eleanor, maybe you should go," I said in a voice that was barely audible. I saw the pain in my friend's eyes, the disappointment, but she nodded and stood up. "All right, but think about what I told you. This doesn't have to be this way. You have the power to change it." When Eleanor left, Sarah planted herself in front of me. "If I see that woman here again, things are going to get very ugly for you. Understood?" I nodded. I always nodded. It was the only thing I knew how to do. "And another thing. Starting tomorrow, you're going to sleep in the utility closet. We need the living room to set up a gym. Alex bought exercise equipment." My throat closed up. The utility closet was 6 feet by 6 feet, barely enough room for a person to stand. There were no windows, no ventilation. "But I can't stay there." "You can, and you will. Or would you rather we look for a retirement home for you? I've heard there are some with affordable prices. Well, for people without money. Obviously, you'd have to sell the apartment first to pay for your stay." The threat was clear. Obey or lose everything. That night, I moved into the utility closet. There was an old mattress on the floor. It smelled of mildew and chemicals. The door didn't close properly. I could hear everything that happened in the apartment. Sarah's laughter, the television blaring, the footsteps that thumped over my head like constant reminders that I was no longer welcome in my own home. I lay down on that hard mattress and looked at the stained ceiling. How had I come to this? How had I allowed them to take everything from me? My dignity, my space, my life. I thought about Michael. How disappointed he would be to see me like this. He was always a strong man. He never let anyone walk all over him. And I was letting his memory, letting our home, be desecrated. The following months were a descent into hell. Sarah found new ways to humiliate me every day. She made me wash her clothes. She forced me to take care of the baby when she went out with friends. She woke me up in the middle of the night to bring her water or food. "You're the grandmother," she'd say. "You should be happy to help." But it wasn't help. It was servitude. Alex saw everything and said nothing. Sometimes I caught him looking at me with something close to guilt. But he never did anything. He never defended me. It was as if he had chosen a side, and that side wasn't mine. One day I overheard another conversation. This time it wasn't accidental. This time Sarah wanted me to hear. "Soon," she was saying to someone on the phone, "the old lady is getting weaker every day, more submissive. In a few more months I'll convince her to sign the apartment over to Alex. Or better yet, we wait for her to get sick. At her age, anything can happen. An accident, a fall." She laughed, a laugh that chilled my blood. "No, I'm not going to do anything to her. I'm just going to make sure her life is so miserable that she herself wants to leave. To a nursing home, to the street. I don't care. This apartment is worth about $300,000. It's our future, and I'm not going to let a bitter old woman take it away from us." She hung up the phone, and I stood paralyzed behind the door. $300,000. That's how they saw me. Not as a person, not as the grandmother of her daughter, as a number, as an obstacle between them and the money. I didn't sleep that night. For the first time in a long time, something inside me started to wake up. It wasn't courage yet. It was something more primal. Survival instinct. The next morning, Sarah walked into the utility closet without knocking. "Get up. You have to clean the whole house. We have company coming tonight and this place is a mess." I looked at the clock. It was 6 o'clock in the morning. "I'm tired," I said. "I need to sleep." Sarah came closer. She squatted down until her face was inches from mine. I could smell her expensive perfume, the perfume she bought with the money they should be using to rent their own place. "I don't care if you're tired. I don't care if you're sick. I don't care if you're dying. You're going to clean this house. You're going to do what I say. Because if you don't, I'm going to tell Alex that you tried to hurt the baby, and he's going to believe me, not you." "That's a lie," I whispered. "Of course it's a lie. But who do you think he cares about? Your son loves me. He trusts me. You're just the old woman who doesn't know when to disappear." She left, and left me trembling in that dark room. And it was in that moment that something finally broke inside me. But it wasn't my spirit. It was the fear. For the first time in 3 years, I felt rage. Pure, bright rage that burned hotter than any humiliation. This was my home, my life, my future they were stealing, and I was going to take it back. I didn't know how, I didn't know when, but I was going to fight, even if it was the last thing I did. That afternoon, while Sarah was taking a nap and Alex was at work, I left the apartment for the first time in weeks. My hands trembled as I closed the door carefully, as if I were an escaping prisoner. In a way, I was. I walked 3 blocks to Eleanor's house. Every step hurt. Not just physically, although my back screamed after months of sleeping on that horrible mattress. My soul hurt. It hurt to admit that I needed help, that I couldn't go on alone. I rang the doorbell and waited. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would jump out of my chest. What would happen if Sarah found out I had left? What punishment would she invent this time? The door opened and there was Eleanor. Her face lit up for a second, but then I saw worry take over her features. "Mary, come in quickly." She ushered me in and sat me on her sofa, a comfortable, soft sofa that reminded me what it felt like to be human. She brought me hot tea and sat across from me, waiting. "I need help," I said, and my voice cracked. "I can't do this anymore. They're going to kill me." "Not physically, but they're going to kill me anyway." Eleanor nodded. "Tell me everything. Leave nothing out." And I told her. About the conversation I had overheard, about Sarah's plans to make me sign over the apartment or wait for something to happen to me, about the threats, about the utility closet, about everything. When I finished, Eleanor had tears in her eyes, but also determination. "This ends today," she said firmly. "We're going to fix this, but you need to be strong. Mary, you need to follow my instructions exactly. Can you do that?" I nodded. For the first time in years, I felt a spark of hope. "First, you need evidence. Record the conversations. Record the threats. Every time Sarah or Alex says something cruel, something threatening, you record it. Do you have a phone?" "Yes, but Sarah checks my phone sometimes." "Then we'll use mine. I'm going to give you an old phone I have. You're going to hide it well, and you're only going to use it for the recordings. No one can know you have it. All right. Second, you need a lawyer. I know someone. His name is James. He's good and he's honest. I'm going to call him today. He's going to tell you exactly what rights you have and how to get those leeches out of your house." "But the money," I whispered. "I don't have money for a lawyer." Eleanor took my hands. "I'm going to help you. I have savings. Consider this a loan if you want, but we are going to get you out of this situation." Tears streamed down my cheeks. I didn't deserve a friend like Eleanor. After months of pushing her away, of throwing her out when Sarah ordered me to, she was still there for me. "One more thing," Eleanor said seriously. "From now on, you're going to come here every day, even if it's just for half an hour. You're going to eat well. You're going to regain your strength, because what's coming is going to be difficult. Sarah isn't going to give up easily. She's going to fight. She's going to manipulate. She's going to lie, and you need to be ready. I returned to the apartment 2 hours later. Sarah was in the living room watching television. "Where were you?" she asked without looking at me. "I went to the pharmacy," I lied. "I needed medicine for my back pain." She snorted. "Sure. Always sick, always complaining. You do everything for attention." I didn't answer. I just went to my utility closet and closed the door. Under the mattress, I hid the phone Eleanor had given me. My secret weapon. My ticket to freedom. The following days seemed the same, but everything had changed. Now, when Sarah insulted me, I recorded. When Alex ignored my pleas for help, I recorded. When I overheard their conversations about the apartment, about their plans, I recorded. "Mary, you're a nuisance. I wish you would just die and leave us alone." Recorded. "Mom, I can't help you right now. Sarah needs me to watch the baby. She's my priority." Recorded. "If the old woman doesn't sign soon, we're going to have to pressure her more, make her life miserable." Recorded. Every insult, every threat, every piece of evidence of their cruelty was documented on that little phone. It was like gathering ammunition for a war they didn't know was about to begin. A week later, Eleanor took me to meet James. He was a man in his 50s, with a kind face but astute eyes, the type of person who knew exactly when someone was lying. "Mrs. Mary," he said after listening to my story, "what they are doing to you is illegal. This is called wrongful possession of property and elder abuse. We have solid grounds for an eviction." "But they're my family," I said weakly. James looked at me with compassion. "Family doesn't mean they can abuse you. Family doesn't mean they can steal your home. You have rights, and I'm going to make sure they are respected." He showed me documents. He explained the legal process. He told me that with the recordings I had collected, plus the fact that the apartment was solely in my name, plus the evidence that they had never paid rent or contributed to expenses, we had a very strong case. "How long will it take?" I asked. "If they don't leave voluntarily when they receive the notice, we can force the eviction in about 30 days. But it's going to get ugly, Mrs. Mary. They are going to react badly. They will threaten. They will try to manipulate you. I need you to be strong." "I will be," I said, and for the first time I truly believed it. James began preparing the documents. Eviction order, complaint for abuse, temporary restraining order if they tried to force me to sell the apartment under pressure. Everything legal, everything correct, everything designed to protect me. Meanwhile, at home, things were getting worse. Sarah sensed that something had changed. She didn't know what, but her intuition told her that I was no longer the same submissive victim. "You're acting weird," she told me one afternoon. "What are you hiding?" "Nothing," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "I'm just tired." She narrowed her eyes. "If you're planning anything stupid, it's going to backfire. You have no one. You have no power. This house is practically ours already." "We'll see," I thought, but I didn't say anything. That night I overheard another crucial conversation. Sarah was talking on the phone with someone, probably her mother. "No, she hasn't signed yet, but I'm thinking about forging her signature on some documents. I have a notary friend who owes me a favor. If we manage to transfer the apartment to Alex's name, the old woman won't be able to do anything. By the time she realizes it, it will be too late." My blood ran cold. Forgery. Fraud. This was worse than I thought. I took out the phone and recorded every word. This conversation alone could put her in prison. The next day, I showed the recording to James. His face became serious. "This changes everything. It's no longer just eviction. This is attempted fraud. I'm going to speed up the process. In 3 days, you will have the court order, and I'm going to recommend that officers be present when we serve it, for your safety." The next 3 days were the longest of my life. Every hour felt like an eternity. Sarah was more aggressive than ever, like an animal that senses danger but doesn't know where it's coming from. She broke one of the few photos I had left of Michael. She said it was an accident, but I saw the smile on her lips. She threw away my favorite clothes, saying they were old and ugly. She forbade me to use the kitchen after 6 in the evening, but I endured it, because I knew the end was near. I knew everything would change soon. I just had to hold on a little longer, a little more humiliation, a little more pain, and then justice would arrive. Eleanor visited me every afternoon when Sarah was out. She brought me food, she hugged me, hugged. She reminded me that I was strong, that I deserved better, that this would soon be over. On the third day, James called me. "It's ready. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to come with 2 police officers. We are going to deliver the notice of eviction. They have 72 hours to vacate the property. If they don't, the officers will remove them by force." "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you for believing me, for helping me." "You are helping yourself, Mrs. Mary. You are being brave. You are taking back your life. I am proud of you." I couldn't sleep that night. Tomorrow everything would change. Tomorrow I would show them that the useless old woman, the weak woman they had trampled on for years, still had teeth. She could still roar. I woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I hadn't really slept. I had just closed my eyes and waited for the clock to move. Every minute felt like an hour, every hour like an eternity. But the day had finally arrived. The day I would reclaim my life. I got up from the mattress in the utility closet for the last time. I would never sleep there again. I would never again be treated like a servant in my own house. Today, everything changed. I showered in silence. Sarah and Alex were still asleep. I could hear his snoring from their room, the room that had been mine, the room where Michael and I had shared 45 years of marriage. I dressed carefully. I chose a dark green dress that Michael had given me years ago. I wanted to look dignified, strong. I wanted that when they saw me, they would know I was no longer the same broken woman they had been stepping on. At 9:30, I heard the doorbell. My heart skipped a beat. I took a deep breath. It was time. I opened the door. There was James with his leather briefcase. Behind him, 2 police officers in impeccable uniforms. One was young, maybe 30 years old. The other older, with gray hair at the temples and a look that said he had seen everything in his career. "Good morning, Mrs. Mary," James said with a reassuring smile. "Are you ready?" I nodded. I didn't trust my voice. If I spoke, I feared it would tremble, that the fear still pulsating beneath my determination would show. They came in. The sound of their footsteps in my apartment was like music, steps of justice, steps of liberation. Sarah came out of her room in a robe, her hair disheveled. Seeing the police officers, her face paled. "What is going on here?" she asked, looking at me with eyes full of fury. "Mary, what did you do?" James stepped forward and handed her an envelope. "I am the attorney for Mrs. Mary Hernandez, the legal owner of this property. I am serving you with a court-ordered notice of eviction. You have 72 hours to vacate this property." Sarah snatched the envelope from his hands. Her eyes scanned the document with increasing speed. I watched her face change from pale to red, from disbelief to rage. "This is a joke," she shouted. "This house is ours. We've been here for 4 years. We have rights." "No, ma'am," the older officer intervened. "You have no rights. You never signed a lease agreement. You never paid rent. You are illegal occupants, and now you have to leave." Alex came out of the bedroom at that moment. Seeing the scene, his confusion was evident. "Mom, what's going on?" "Your mother is throwing us out," Sarah screamed. "After 4 years. After everything we've done for her, she's throwing us into the street." "What did you do for me?" My voice came out louder than I expected, firmer. "What exactly did you do? Steal my bedroom? Put me to sleep in a utility closet? Humiliate me every day? Plan to forge my signature to steal the apartment?" Sarah froze. "How do you know that?" I pulled my phone out of my pocket, the phone with all the recordings. "I have everything, every insult, every threat, every plan you made to steal what is mine, and the lawyer has copies of everything." Alex looked at me as if I were a stranger. "Mom, you can't do this. We're your family." Something inside me broke upon hearing him, not out of sadness, out of liberation, as if invisible chains had finally snapped. "Family? Alex, you stopped being my family 4 years ago. 4 years ago you chose this woman over your own mother. 4 years ago you watched me suffer and did nothing. Family doesn't treat the people they love like that." My voice cracked, but I continued. "You made me sleep on the sofa, then in a utility closet. You put locks on the doors of my own house to keep me out. You let your wife treat me like garbage, and you never, not once, defended me." Alex opened his mouth, but no words came out. For the first time in years, he had no excuses. He had no justifications. Just silence. Sarah found her voice then, her true voice. The cruel voice she had been using with me for years and now shamelessly directed in front of the officers. "You're a stupid old woman, a useless hag. You think you won, but you're going to end up alone, completely alone. And when you're dying in some miserable nursing home, you're going to remember this day and regret it." The young officer stepped forward. "Ma'am, I suggest you calm down. Any further threats may result in charges." But Sarah was out of control. The whole mask of civility had fallen. She turned to me, her eyes full of venom. "You know what, Mary? I never liked you. From the first day I met Alex, I knew you were going to be a problem. An intrusive, pathetic mother-in-law. That's why we planned this from the beginning. We were never going to pay rent. We were never going to leave. The plan was always to stay until you died or left." And it almost worked. James took a recorder out of his briefcase. "Thank you for the confession, Mrs. Sarah. This makes things much easier." Sarah's face went white. "Me? No, I was kidding." "Of course you weren't," James said coldly. "And now it's all recorded. Attempted wrongful appropriation, elder abuse, planned fraud. Mrs. Mary could file criminal charges in addition to the civil eviction." Sarah turned to Alex. "Say something. Do something." But my son just looked at the floor. As always, cowardly until the end. Then Sarah did something I will never forget. She ran toward me. For a second, I thought she was going to hit me. The young officer moved to intercept her, but she stopped inches from my face. "This doesn't end here, you hag. I'm going to ruin your life. I'm going to make you regret this. You're going to wish you had never met us." "I already regret it," I said calmly. "I regret opening my door. I regret being kind. I regret putting up with your cruelty for so long. But that ends today." The older officer stepped between us. "Mrs. Sarah, do you need to step back right now, or am I going to arrest you for intimidation? Understood?" Sarah backed away, but her eyes remained fixed on me, full of hatred, full of promises of revenge that I knew she couldn't keep. "You have 72 hours, James repeated. "If you haven't left by 10 o'clock Thursday morning, the officers will return and remove you by force." "Can we take all our personal belongings?" Sarah asked in disbelief. "Yes, but anything you have added to the property without Mrs. Mary's permission stays." "That includes the furniture, the appliances, everything?" Sarah asked. "Everything you bought and installed without the owner's written consent is technically an unauthorized improvement to the property. Therefore, it stays." Sarah screamed in frustration. "This is robbery!" "No, ma'am," the older officer said. "Robbery is what you tried to do. This is justice." The officers and James left, after verifying that all the documentation was in order. They left me copies of everything: court orders, restraining orders, emergency numbers in case Sarah or Alex tried anything. When they left, I was left alone in the living room with Sarah and Alex. The silence was so dense it could be cut with a knife. Finally, Alex spoke. "Mom, please, think about your granddaughter. She's going to grow up without knowing you." And that was their final move, using the baby as a weapon, as if that would break me, as if after everything they had done, he could blackmail me with my own love. "Alex," I said with a calm I didn't know I possessed, "if you really cared about me knowing my granddaughter, you wouldn't have let your wife treat me the way she did. You wouldn't have taken my room. You wouldn't have abandoned me when I needed you most. This is not my fault. It is a consequence of your decisions, of hers. You chose this." He left without saying anything else. Sarah followed him, but not before giving me one last look of pure hatred. When the door to their room closed with a slam, I finally let out the breath I had been holding. My legs were shaking. I sat down on the sofa, my former forced resting place, and let the tears come out. But they were not tears of sadness. They were of relief, of liberation, of justice finally served. I had taken the most difficult step of my life, and I had survived. The next 3 days were a silent war. Sarah and Alex moved through the apartment like furious ghosts. They packed their things with sharp thuds, throwing objects, slamming doors. Every noise was a declaration of rage. Every glance they cast at me was a poisoned dagger. But I was no longer afraid. Eleanor came every day. She sat with me in the living room while Sarah packed in the bedroom. My friend didn't say much. Just being there was enough. Her presence was a reminder that I was not alone, that I had made the right decision. On the second day, Sarah tried to take things that didn't belong to her: the living room television, the washing machine, even some furniture that had been in the apartment before they arrived. "That stays," I said when I saw her disconnecting the television. She spun around with a cruel smile. "Ah, now you talk. Now you have a voice. How brave you've become with your lawyers and your police." "That television was here before you arrived. It's mine. Leave it." "Prove it," she challenged me. I took out my phone and called James. He answered on the second ring. I put him on speakerphone. "Mrs. Sarah," James's voice filled the room, "I remind you that any property that was in the apartment before your arrival belongs to Mrs. Mary. If you attempt to take anything that doesn't belong to you, we will be adding theft to the charges. The officers have a complete inventory. Do you want to take that risk?" Sarah dropped the television cable as if it burned. She gave me a look of pure hatred and stomped out of the living room. "Thank you, James," I whispered into the phone. "That's what I'm here for, Mrs. Mary. Call me if you need anything at all. They are not above the law, no matter how much they act like they are." That night, I heard Sarah and Alex arguing. Their voices cut through the walls like knives. "This is your fault," Sarah screamed. "You said your mother was weak, that we could do whatever we wanted, and now look where we are, homeless, with nothing." "I didn't know she would do this," Alex replied. "I've never seen her like this. She was always so submissive." "Exactly, and you assumed she would keep doing it forever. Idiot. Now we're going to have to pay $1,200 a month for rent somewhere else. Where are we going to get that money?" "I don't know. We'll look for something cheaper." "There is nothing cheaper. Everything is so expensive. And it's your mother's fault, that miserable old woman who betrayed us." "She didn't betray us. We betrayed her first." There was a long silence. Then I heard the sound of something breaking. Sarah had thrown something against the wall. "Don't come to me with guilt now. It's too late for that. What we need is a plan. We need to find a way to stay." "There's no way," Alex said, and his voice sounded defeated. "We lost." I walked away from the door. For the first time, Alex had said something true. They had lost. And that didn't give me joy, but it did give me peace. A strange, bitter peace, but peace nonetheless. The third day dawned gray and cold. It was Thursday, the deadline. At 10 o'clock in the morning, if they were still here, the officers would come and remove them by force. I woke up early. I made coffee in my own kitchen, without fear of Sarah yelling at me for using her expensive utensils. I sat at the dining table and looked out the window, the same spot where Michael used to read the newspaper every morning. Soon I could fill this space with good memories again. Soon I could start to heal. At 8 o'clock in the morning, Sarah came out of her room. She was carrying 2 large suitcases. Her face was swollen, as if she had been crying all night. But when she saw me, she hardened her expression. "I hope you're happy," she said with venom in every word. "You threw us out, your own family, your granddaughter. I hope you can live with that." "I will live perfectly well," I replied. "Better than I have lived in 4 years." She dropped the suitcases. She approached the table where I was sitting. She leaned in until her face was close to mine. "You know what the worst thing about all this is, Mary? That I really thought you were stupid. I thought you were weak. That we could do whatever we wanted with you and you would never react. And I was right for a long time. You were weak. You were pathetic. You let us walk all over you because you didn't have the guts to defend yourself." I swallowed, but held her gaze. "The only thing I regret," Sarah continued, "is not being crueler. I should have gotten you out of here years ago. I should have made you sign papers when you still trusted us. I was too soft, too patient." "You weren't soft," I said in a firm voice. "You were an abuser. And abusers always underestimate their victims. They always think they can get away with it without consequences. But you were wrong about me, and now you pay the price. Sarah straightened up. Her hand moved so fast that I didn't have time to react. She slapped me so hard my head snapped to the side. The sting on my cheek was intense, but I didn't say anything. I didn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me cry. At that moment, Alex entered the living room. He saw my red cheek. He saw Sarah's hand still in the air, and he did nothing. "Let's go," he simply said. "It's enough." Sarah grabbed her suitcases and walked toward the door, but she stopped and turned one last time. "Oh, by the way, your beloved photo of Michael, the one you had on your nightstand. I had the pleasure of throwing it in the trash 6 months ago, and those old letters you kept in the drawer. I threw those away too, because I knew it would hurt you, and it gave me pleasure to see you suffer." I felt as if a knife had been plunged into my heart. Those letters were the last things I had left of Michael, his handwritten words of love from the years he worked out of town. They were irreplaceable. "Monster," I whispered. "You are a monster." Sarah laughed. "And you are a sentimental fool. Goodbye, Mary. Enjoy your empty apartment. Enjoy your loneliness, because that's all you have left." She left. Alex picked up the last boxes and followed her without looking at me, without a word, without an apology, without anything. The door closed behind them, and silence flooded the apartment, a silence so profound I could hear my own breathing, the tick-tock of the clock on the wall, the distant hum of the street outside. I sat at that table for a long time. I don't know exactly how long. It could have been minutes or hours. I just stayed there, processing what had just happened, processing that they were finally gone, that I had won. But it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a loss, not of them, but of something deeper, of the illusion of family, of the hope that my son would one day become the man I wanted him to be. I cried then, not for them, for me, for the 4 lost years, for the humiliations endured, for the woman I had been before they arrived and destroyed my peace, for Michael, who would have been devastated to see what had happened to his family. The doorbell rang at 10 o'clock sharp. It was James and the officers, checking that Sarah and Alex had left. "They left an hour ago," I told them in a hoarse voice. James came in and looked around. He immediately noticed my swollen cheek. "She hit you." I nodded. "Do you want to press assault charges?" I shook my head. "I just want peace. I want them to disappear from my life forever." The older officer approached. "Ma'am, I understand how you feel, but people like that don't stop. If there are no consequences now, they will do it again, to you or to someone else." Maybe he was right, but I was so tired, so empty. I had no energy for more battles. "Let me think about it," I finally said. James nodded. "Take your time, but know that you have 30 days to decide on the assault charges. After that, we can no longer do anything legally." The officers checked the apartment to make sure they hadn't left anything dangerous, nothing booby-trapped. With people that resentful, you never knew. "Everything is clear," the young officer reported, "but I recommend changing the locks today, and if you see either of them loitering, call 911 immediately. The restraining order is active. They cannot approach within 300 feet. When everyone left, I was alone for the first time in 4 years, truly alone, the absolute owner of my space, of my life, of my future. I walked through every room. What had been my bedroom was now empty except for the bed. Sarah had taken everything else, curtains, lamps, rugs. She left only the bare minimum. I walked into my former room with slow steps. The bed was still there, but it looked strange. Naked, empty of everything except the mattress Sarah had used. The walls had marks where their pictures had been, holes where their things had hung, like wounds on the skin of the room that had been my sanctuary. I sat on the edge of the bed and ran my hands over the mattress. This was not mine. Mine, the one Michael and I had shared for decades, had disappeared years ago. Sarah had thrown it out, saying it was old and full of mites. She replaced it with this one. Cold, without history, without a soul. I opened the nightstand drawer with trembling hands. Empty. Sarah had told the truth. Michael's letters were gone. those handwritten words of love in his irregular script, those pieces of yellowed paper that smelled of time and fulfilled promises, all destroyed out of pure malice. I closed the drawer and allowed myself a moment of pure pain, of irreparable loss, because even though I had recovered my house, I had lost something I could never replace, pieces of Michael that existed only in those letters, words I could never read again. But then I remembered something Sarah didn't know, something no one knew except me. I got up and went to the closet. In the back, behind old boxes and winter clothes, there was a shoebox, a box I had hidden years ago and that in all the chaos of the last 4 years I had completely forgotten about. I carefully took it out. My hands were shaking as I removed the lid, and there they were. More letters. The first ones Michael had written to me when we were dating, photos of our wedding, a lock of Alex's hair when he was a baby, memories I had stored so long ago that they had become invisible even to me. Tears streamed down my cheeks, but this time they were not tears of sadness. They were of relief. Sarah had not won completely. She had not been able to destroy everything. I still had pieces of my past left, pieces of love that she could never touch. I sat on the closet floor and read the letters, Michael's young handwriting, his awkward but sincere words, promises to build a life together, to grow old holding hands, promises he had kept until his last day. "I miss you," I whispered to the wedding photo. But I did it. I got them out. I got our house back. The doorbell rang, interrupting my moment. I wiped my tears and went to open it. It was Eleanor with a basket full of food. "I came to celebrate," she said with a smile, "and to make sure you're okay." "I am okay," I said, and for the first time in years, it was true. I am truly okay. Eleanor came in and looked around. "I can tell they took a lot of stuff." "Yes, but I don't care. They were their things anyway, things without a soul. I can replace them." We cooked together that afternoon, something I hadn't done in a long time. Eleanor prepared her famous chili while I chopped vegetables. We talked and laughed, the apartment filled with delicious smells and kind conversation. It felt like coming back to life. As we ate, Eleanor became serious. "Mary, I want to ask you something. How do you really feel? Don't tell me you're fine if it's not true." I thought about her question, about how I truly felt. It was complicated. It was a mix of relief, sadness, anger, peace. "I feel free," I finally said. "But I also feel sad. I lost my son. Maybe not the person who left today, because that person stopped being my son a long time ago. But I lost the hope of getting him back, and that hurts." Eleanor took my hand. "The Alex you raised is still in there. Maybe someday he'll wake up. Maybe he'll realize what he lost. But even if he doesn't, you did the right thing. Saving yourself is not selfishness, it's survival." "I know, but it still hurts. Pain means your heart still works, that you can still feel, and that's good. It means they didn't completely break you." That night, after Eleanor left, I walked through the apartment turning off lights. Every room felt different, more spacious, like I could breathe again, as if the walls themselves had expanded now that the darkness was gone. I stopped in front of the living room window. The city shone outside with thousands of lights, people living their lives, people with their own battles and victories, and I was one of them now, a survivor, a fighter. The following days were strange. I would wake up expecting to hear Sarah's screams, Alex's demands, the baby's crying, but there was only silence, a beautiful and terrifying silence at the same time. I hired a locksmith who changed all the locks, including the ones Sarah had put on the bedrooms. Watching those locks disappear was cathartic, like pulling the last thorns from a wound. I took the mattress from the utility closet where I had slept and threw it in the trash. Watching that piece of humiliation disappear into the garbage truck made me smile. I would never sleep on the floor again. I would never again be treated as less than human in my own home. I bought a new mattress for my bedroom. Nothing fancy. I didn't have much money, but it was mine, chosen by me. And when I lay down on it that first night, I cried tears of gratitude for having a bed, for having a room, for having dignity. A week after the eviction, I received a call from an unknown number. I hesitated before answering. It could be Sarah, it could be Alex, but something made me pick up. "Mary?" It was Alex's voice. He sounded tired, defeated. "What do you want?" I asked in a neutral voice. I wanted to know how you were." "I'm fine. Better than I've been in 4 years." There was a long silence. Then I heard something I didn't expect. A sob. My son was crying. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry I didn't defend you. I'm sorry I was such a coward. I'm sorry I let you suffer. You were right. I stopped being your son a long time ago." "Why are you calling me now, Alex? What do you want from me?" "Nothing. I don't want anything. I just wanted you to know that I realize it. Everything I did wrong, everything I allowed. Sarah left me. She took the girl and left with her mother. She says I'm useless, that I'm good for nothing. And she's right." I felt a pang in my chest, not of compassion, of something more complicated. He was my son, even though he had betrayed me, even though he had abandoned me. He was my son suffering. "Alex," I said in a firm but not cruel voice, "I'm sorry Sarah left you. I'm sorry you're going through this, but I can't save you." "Not this time. You chose this path. Now you have to walk it." "I know," he whispered. "I didn't call to ask you to save me. I just wanted to say that I'm sorry, and that I understand if you never forgive me. I don't deserve your forgiveness." He hung up before I could answer. I was left with the phone in my hand, staring at the blank screen. Part of me wanted to call him back, the part that was still a mother, the part that remembered the sweet child he once was. But the strongest part of me, the part that had survived 4 years of hell, knew I couldn't do it. Forgiving him now would be returning to the old patterns. It would be telling him he could hurt me without consequences. And that was never going to happen again. I put the phone away and continued with my day, because that's what survivors do. They keep moving forward. 2 weeks later, the apartment was starting to feel like home again. I had bought new curtains, cream-colored, soft, and bright. I had put back the family photos that Sarah had hidden, Michael smiling from the frames, Alex when he was a child, before he became a stranger. Eleanor helped me paint the living room. We chose a warm color, pale yellow, like the morning sun, like hope. While we painted, she told me stories, neighborhood gossip, news of old friends, simple, normal things that reminded me that life existed beyond the pain. That joy was still available if I allowed myself to reach for it. "You know what you should do," Eleanor said as she cleaned a brush. "You should start sewing again. You were so good at it. You could do alterations for the neighborhood, earn a little extra money." I liked the idea. I had given up sewing when Sarah arrived. She said the sound of the machine bothered her, that my fabrics made a mess, so I had packed everything away in boxes. "You're right," I said. "I'm going to get my machine out. I'm going to create again." "That's it, Mary. Go back to living. Go back to being you." A month after the eviction, my life had completely changed. The apartment no longer looked like the cold, hostile place Sarah had created. Slowly, it was turning back into a home. My home. I took my old sewing machine out of the closet where it had been buried for 4 years. I cleaned it carefully, removed the accumulated dust, oiled the parts that needed it. When I turned it on for the first time, the familiar hum made me smile. It was like reuniting with an old friend. I started doing alterations for the neighbors, pant hems, dress adjustments, repairing broken seams. I didn't charge much, just enough to supplement my pension. But it wasn't about the money. It was about reclaiming a part of myself that I had lost. The creative part, the productive part, the part that found joy in creating something with my own hands. The clients would come and stay for coffee. We would talk while I worked. They would tell me about their lives, and slowly I started to tell them about mine. Not all the dark details, but enough, and I discovered something surprising. I wasn't the only one. Many women had gone through similar situations: abusive relatives, ungrateful children, losses, and betrayals. One afternoon, a neighbor named Angela came to pick up a dress I had altered for her. She was a woman in her 60s, always elegant, always with a smile. "Mary," she told me as she tried on the dress, "I want to thank you. not just for the alteration, but for your courage. I heard what you went through, and you inspired me. I don't understand, I said, confused. My sister has been living with me for 3 years. She doesn't pay anything. She treats me like her maid. And I was always afraid to kick her out because, well, she's my sister. But after hearing your story, I talked to a lawyer. I gave her 30 days to leave, and she's leaving next week. Angela's eyes shone with tears, but also with something else, liberation. You gave me the courage to take back my life, so thank you. I just did what I had to do, I said softly. Exactly. And you taught me that I can do it too. When she left, I thought about her words. Maybe my pain had not been in vain. Maybe my story could help others find their own strength. That idea gave me a sense of purpose that I hadn't felt in years. Weeks turned into months. Fall arrived with its golden leaves and crisp air. I put plants in the windows. I bought new pillows for the sofa. Small touches that made the apartment feel alive again. James called occasionally to check that everything was fine. He informed me that Sarah and Alex had not attempted to contact me legally. The restraining order was still active and they were respecting it. At least there was that. Have you thought about the assault charges? He asked me on one of those calls. I decided not to file them, I replied. I just want peace. I want to close that chapter. I understand. But if you change your mind or if they try anything, call me immediately. I will. And James, thank you for believing me, for helping me when I needed it most. It was an honor, Mrs. Mary. I wish more people had your courage. But I didn't feel courageous. I just felt tired of suffering. And I had discovered that sometimes survival looks like courage, even if it's not really. One afternoon in November, as I was sewing by the window, I saw something that chilled my blood. Across the street, watching my building, was Sarah. Her hair was shorter, and she was wearing clothes I didn't recognize, but it was her, without a doubt. I froze. My first instinct was to call the police. The restraining order was clear. She couldn't be within 300 feet. But something stopped me. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the need to face her one last time, but on my terms. I went downstairs, my heart pounding loudly. I crossed the street directly toward her. When she saw me coming, her expression changed. Surprise first, then something like fear. What are you doing here, Sarah? You know you're violating the restraining order. She swallowed. I needed to see you, to talk to you. We have nothing to talk about. Leave or I'll call the police. Please. Her voice cracked. Just 5 minutes. That's all I ask. There was something different about her. The arrogance was gone. The cruelty in her eyes had faded. She looked tired, defeated, almost human. Against my better judgment, I nodded. 5 minutes, but here on the street. You are not coming up to my apartment. Okay. We stood on the sidewalk as people walked past us. Sarah looked at the ground as if she didn't know where to start. Alex and I broke up, she finally said. I left with the girl. I'm living with my mother, and it's horrible. My mother is just like I was with you, controlling, cruel, and for the first time, I understand what I did to you. I raised an eyebrow. You came looking for my compassion, my forgiveness. No, I came to tell you that you were right. I was a monster to you, and now I'm getting what I deserve. My mother treats me like trash. She makes me feel small and useless, just like I made you feel, and I hate it. I hate it so much. What do you want me to do with that information, Sarah? She finally looked at me. Her eyes were red, swollen. Nothing. I don't want anything. I just needed you to know that I understand, that I regret it. Part of me wanted to believe her, the part that still remembered compassion. But the stronger part, the part that had survived, knew that words were easy. Actions were what counted. I believe you regret it now, I said, but only because you are suffering. If things were going well for you, if you were still in my apartment living for free, you would feel nothing. The regret that comes only from your own pain is not true regret. I know, she whispered. You're right, but I still needed to tell you. It's fine, you said it. You, now leave and don't come back. If I see you near my house again, I will call the police. No warnings." Sarah nodded. She wiped her tears and turned around. I watched her walk away down the street, her shoulders slumped, her steps slow. Part of me felt sorry for her, but only a very small part. I went back up to my apartment and locked the door. I leaned against it and took a deep breath. That encounter could have destroyed me months ago, but now it just left me exhausted. Exhausted, but at peace. That night, as I was making dinner in my kitchen, the phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but something made me answer. "Mom?" The voice was Alex's, but it sounded strange, trembling. "Alex, what's wrong?" "I'm at the hospital. I had an accident. Nothing serious, but I need surgery on my leg. And I have no one else to call." I felt that familiar tug in my chest, the maternal instinct that never completely dies no matter how much your children hurt you. "What hospital?" "St. Raphael's. But Mom, you don't have to come if you don't want to. I would understand. I just needed to hear your voice." "I'm coming," I said before I could stop myself. "Give me 30 minutes." I hung up and stared at the phone. What was I doing? After everything that had happened, why was I running to help him? Maybe because he was still my son. Maybe because a mother's love doesn't turn off with a switch. Or maybe because I had learned that I could help without losing myself in the process. I grabbed my purse and left. But this time was different. I wasn't going as the desperate, submissive mother I had been. I was going as a woman who knew her worth, a woman who had learned to set boundaries, a woman who could offer help without sacrificing her dignity. The hospital was crowded when I arrived. I found Alex's room on the 3rd floor. He was in a bed with his leg bandaged, hooked up to an IV. He looked pale and small. When he saw me come in, his eyes filled with tears. "You came." "I came, but only for tonight. Alex, tomorrow you'll have to manage on your own." "I know, and that's okay. It's more than I deserve." I sat in the chair next to his bed. The silence between us was heavy, loaded with years of pain and unspoken words. Alex looked at the ceiling as if he didn't know where to start. "How do you feel?" I finally asked. "It hurts," he replied. "Not just my leg. Everything. My whole life is a mess. Mom, I lost my job 2 weeks ago. Sarah took my daughter and barely lets me see her. I'm living in a rented room that costs $500 a month, and I don't even have enough to pay for next month." He paused and wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "And the worst part is, I know it's my fault. Everything. Every horrible decision I made brought me here. And the worst of all was leaving you, betraying you, allowing Sarah to treat you the way she did." His words were sincere. I could feel it, but I also knew that words didn't change the past. They didn't erase the pain. They didn't bring back the lost years. "Alex," I said with a firm but not cruel voice, "I appreciate you recognizing what you did, but I can't save you, not this time. You chose this path. Now you have to walk it." "I know," he whispered. "I didn't ask you to come to save me. I just needed to see you. I needed you to know that I'm sorry. I regret it every day." "Regret is fine," I continued, "but it's not enough. You need to change. You need to become a different man. Not for me, for you, for your daughter. Because if you continue to be the same person who was so cowardly for 4 years, you're going to keep losing everything that matters." "You're right, as always. How could you even forgive me enough to come here?" "I'm not sure I've forgiven you yet," I said honestly. "But you are my son, and a part of me will always love you, no matter what you've done. That doesn't mean I'm going to let you hurt me again. It means I can offer you this, tonight, this conversation, and after that, you'll have to walk your own path." A doctor came in then, interrupting our conversation. He explained that Alex needed minor surgery on his leg, a fracture that required plates and screws. He would be hospitalized for 3 days. The cost was approximately $8,000, but since he didn't have insurance, he would have to pay in installments. I saw the panic in my son's eyes. $8,000 that he didn't have, a future of debt that he couldn't pay. And again, that tug in my chest, the instinct to protect, to fix, to sacrifice myself. But I stopped. I took a deep breath. I remembered everything that had happened. I remembered the utility closet, the humiliations, the threats, the pain of 4 years. "The hospital has financial aid programs," I said. "Talk to social services. They can help you reduce the debt or set up a payment plan you can manage." Alex nodded. "I wasn't expecting you to pay, just to be here, and you already did that. It's more than I deserved." I stayed for 2 more hours. We talked about small things, memories of when he was a child, his graduation, his first bicycle, moments before everything broke, and for the first time in years, I could see traces of the child I had raised in the man lying in that bed. When I got up to leave, Alex took my hand. "Mom, there's something else I need to tell you. Sarah threw away your letters, but I saved one that I found before she could destroy it. It's in a safety deposit box at the bank. I always knew that someday I would want to give it back to you. If you want, I can give you the code so you can retrieve it." My heart raced. A letter from Michael, one that had survived, one last connection to the past that I thought I had lost forever. "I would like that," I whispered. "I'll send it to you, soon, I promise. And Mom, one last thing. If I ever decide to be a better man, I want you to know it will be because of you, because you taught me what real strength is, not shouting, not abusing, not taking advantage of the weak, but getting up when you are knocked down, fighting when it seems impossible. That's what I saw in you, and that's what I want for myself." I leaned down and kissed his forehead, like when he was a child having nightmares, a simple gesture that contained all the complicated love between a mother and her son. "Take care of yourself, Alex, and take care of your daughter. She needs a better father than you were a son." "I will be. I promise." I left the hospital with tears in my eyes, but with a lighter heart. I didn't know if Alex would really change, if his promises meant anything or if they were just words said out of pain. But I had done what I could. I had given him a chance to know that even though there were boundaries now, the love hadn't completely died. The following months were the most peaceful I had experienced in years. My sewing business grew. The neighbors recommended my services to their friends. Soon I was working 6 days a week, not because I desperately needed the money, but because I enjoyed the work. I enjoyed feeling useful, productive, alive. Eleanor and I became inseparable. We had lunch together 3 times a week. We went to the market on Saturdays. We watched movies in my apartment, the same apartment that was once my prison and was now my sanctuary. In December, a package arrived in the mail. The sender was Alex. Inside, carefully wrapped in tissue paper, was the letter. Michael's handwriting filled the yellowed page, dated 30 years ago, when he was working in another state and wrote to me every week. "My dearest Mary," it read, "the days without you are gray even when the sun is shining. But knowing that at the end of this temporary separation, I will have you in my arms again makes it all worthwhile. I am building our future, brick by brick, dollar by dollar, so you will never lack anything, so you will always have a safe place to call home. I love you today. I will love you tomorrow. I will love you until my last breath." I cried reading his words, but they were not tears of sadness. They were of gratitude. Gratitude for having known that love, for having built that home Michael promised, for having defended it when it was under attack. I put the letter in a frame next to our wedding photo, a reminder of what was, of what I fought to preserve, of what I finally reclaimed. Christmas arrived with its quiet magic. I decorated the apartment with lights and a small tree. Eleanor and I cooked together and invited some neighbors over. The apartment filled with laughter and warmth, the kind of celebration I hadn't had in years. Alex called me that night, just to wish me a Merry Christmas, to tell me he was working again, that he was going to therapy, that he was trying to be better. I don't know if I completely believed him, but hope is a powerful thing, and I allowed myself to have a little. Sarah never came back. I heard through neighborhood gossip that she had moved to another state, that her life hadn't been easy either after all. Part of me felt satisfaction in that, the human part that wanted justice, but the larger part simply felt relief that that chapter was over. One afternoon in January, as I was sewing by the window with the winter sun illuminating my work, I stopped and looked around. The apartment was at peace. I was at peace. I had survived the storm and found solid ground on the other side. I thought about the woman I had been 4 years ago, so full of pain from Michael's loss, so vulnerable, so willing to sacrifice herself for the illusion of family. And I thought about the woman I was now, stronger, wiser, more aware of her own value. The journey had been brutal. I had lost years of peace. I had lost the relationship with my son, at least the one I had known. I had lost my innocence about how cruel people could be, even the people who supposedly love you. But I had also gained something invaluable. I had gained myself. I had discovered that I had guts, that I could fight, that I could win, that I didn't have to accept abuse just because it was wrapped in the word family. I had learned that setting boundaries is not cruelty. It is self-love. That saying no to what hurts you is saying yes to your own life. That it is never too late to reclaim your dignity. And that night, as I lay down in my own bed, in my own room, in my own apartment, I smiled. For the first time in years, I smiled with true happiness. Not because of something I had gained externally, but because of something I had recovered internally. My peace, my strength, my life. I would never again let anyone steal what was mine. Not my space, not my dignity, not my right to be treated with respect. I made that promise to myself, and this time I knew I would keep it, because I had learned the most important lesson of all, that love does not mean accepting abuse, that family is not an excuse for cruelty, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand up for what is yours, no matter who is on the other side. I closed my eyes and fell asleep, in peace, in my home, finally free.